Alright guys, welcome back to F1 News. If any team wants to take the fight to Red Bull in this era of regulations, they will need to improve their aerodynamics, but also quite possibly compensate with improved power unit performance. Big reports emerging today that Mercedes have compromised their power unit over the last couple of years by exploring the zeropod option. This opens the door to a vastly improved power unit and increased horsepower going into next season that could overturn quite a significant deficit, even if the aero isn't quite up to Red Bull standards. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Quick update on Andretti. If you guys saw yesterday, the FIA, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, have said, yes, Andretti, in you go and negotiate with Formula One themselves and have fun doing that because it's going to be a wild ride. And actually, General Motors, partnering with the Cadillac side with Andretti, are making budget provisions apparently to, well, enable a construction of a Formula One engine. So they're looking to get involved in that project as well and are prepared for this potential move. So everything is moving on that end. Whether things move on the Formula One end, that's another question. And to be fair, I know there were rumours that they were going to partner with Alpine, I think, to get the Alpine engines from Renault effectively, but I don't know if that's going to happen anymore. So that's an interesting question. But of course, even if you buy the engines, you've got to have someone, I guess, assemble them to a certain extent. And also, Karun Chanok was hearing by one team principal that teams would lose. This is the reason why the teams don't want it to happen. There's a pie, and if you split the pie one more way, you lose some money. That's roughly equating to 11 million per year. So if Andretti were to put $600 million in, that would cover the teams for 5 years. And look, you can't cover the teams forever. The reasonable number that's been floating around for the last several years in the current Concord agreement is $200 million. As I said yesterday, the number that's now being floated around is more like 600 million to $1 billion. But the issue is, from Formula One side, they can't really say no because effectively, due to European Union laws, if they were to say no, Andretti could challenge that legally, and I'm not really sure Formula One wants to go through a lengthy legal challenge on this stuff. More than likely, they'll come to some sort of agreement where Andretti probably pay more of an entry fee than they want to, but it's probably in the best interest of both parties now to enable that to happen. So very strong position to enter Formula One for maybe 2025 or just the new set of regulations come 2026. Now, I know some of you guys say, oh, you keep talking about Lawson every couple of days, which is true, but mainly because it's one of the interesting stories right now. And he is going to be here for one more race weekend, we believe. Danny Rick, it's pretty much been confirmed now, will probably return for the Austin Grand Prix in Texas, but this time out in Qatar, it will be Liam Lawson again. Probably his last showing in a car for some time. As I said the other day, there is a definite possibility that Ricciardo gets put into the Red Bull seat at some point next season with Perez getting fired, maybe mid-year. That's been a rumour. And at that point, Lawson would come back into the AlphaTauri, which is probably going to be a new and improved car next year because they are taking everything they possibly can from the Red Bull, according to Helmut Marko. So Ricciardo's done some sim sessions that went well, but he's not yet fully at 100%. And, you know, trying out FP1 and then deciding, all right, you know what, I can't really do qualifying for the sprints. Bit too much of a turnaround. Putting Lawson in for one more race, I think makes sense. This is his final chance to really show what he's got, but I think we kind of know that at this point anyway, and he's definitely a valuable asset for Red Bull, but they're not deploying him as yet. So yeah, Lawson's going to race this weekend. Ricciardo probably racing the weekend or maybe 2 weekends after that in Austin. That is the current plan. Now, Max Verstappen goes into Qatar, poised to win the Drivers' Championship this weekend. His advantage over Perez is nigh on ridiculous, to be honest, and he's been getting a lot of credit for good reason. Even Hamilton said, all I can say is keep doing what you're doing. Obviously, Max is doing an extraordinary job at Red Bull. The consistency is definitely admirable, but of course, they've got the best car, and the question is, who's going to be able to challenge Max and that car next season? As I've said before, the reality of the situation is in Formula One, the same two teams have won every single Drivers' or Constructors' Championship for the last 13 years. Going back to 2009 is the first time that it's not a Red Bull or Mercedes victory, but even then Brawn GP then became Mercedes. So really you're going back to 2008 with McLaren winning the Drivers and Ferrari winning the Constructors, since which point it's not been a Red Bull or Mercedes victory in either category. So if there is a team that on paper should be in best position to actually challenge Red Bull next season, on, you know, theoretically it's Mercedes, but they don't seem to have the grasp of the current set of regulations. They might be able to find some performance though on the power unit department. This is always where Mercedes they didn't necessarily always have the best aero, but they definitely in the early years of the turbo hybrid era had their best engine. And they've been basically with the best engine or pretty much the best engine for the last, for this entire era, pretty much. But the last couple of seasons, since 2022, their engine performance has dropped off. It's been noted that the Ferrari is possibly, 10, 15, maybe even 20 horsepower more powerful than the Mercedes. The Honda engine is also more powerful than the Mercedes, maybe on par with the Ferrari, maybe not. And the Ferrari engine might be the most powerful, but they probably have to run it at slightly reduced performance so it doesn't blow up, because that's happened a few times during last season. So people were wondering though, was it the fact that now there's like 5-10% biofuel in the allocation? So was that what caused Mercedes performance in terms of power to drop off? Because it clearly hasn't been where it used to be over the last 2 seasons. Now, the teams can improve their engines. They can't make changes that will improve performance. They can make changes that improve reliability, but effectively that's one of the same things. If you improve reliability, you can run your engine at higher engine modes and therefore generate more performance. So it's kind of it's a bit of a grey area one, to be honest, that the teams always exploit. And even Red Bull are saying, because Honda are saying that, well, we want Red Bull to win everything for the next 2 years, but then in 2026, when we're going to partner with Aston Martin, then it's obviously a changing of the situation. And the belief is that the ERS system of the Honda is very good, but Honda also say that the Ferrari has a great ICE, the Mercedes has a good ERS, and we will improve reliability so that we can effectively improve performance. So they say that there's upgrades coming to the Red Bull engine, and there will be tweaks made on reliability, is what they say, so that all the power units get somewhat stronger. But there might be more room for upgrading the Mercedes engine than the others. And this comes because, according to Giuliano De Chessa, 10 horsepower difference is roughly 0.2 of a second. And, a 0.2 of a second aerodynamic upgrade, that's a big deal. If Mercedes were to be able to get 0.2 closer to Red Bull, okay, that's not going to get them winning races, but that's going to get them on podiums on a way more consistent basis. So 0.2 creates quite a lot of work from the aero guys to make that kind of step. Whereas if you can make that step in horsepower, that also creates a similar thing, more power on the straight. Obviously you go faster and you can maybe compensate with higher aero load. Maybe you get the same top speed, but you can put higher wings on, therefore you can go faster in the corners. This type of stuff, that's roughly the equation. The belief has been that Mercedes have been at least 10 horsepower down on where the Honda, that's the Red Bull, and the Ferrari engine have been. And why is that the case? Reports emerging today, it's because of the way they package their car. And this was one of the downsides that we talked about even at the time when the zeropod was originally unveiled, that sure, they thought it had massive aero advantages, but one of the disadvantages is cooling. It's a very compact, what Mercedes did to be able to package the engine in that bodywork is an engineering miracle, really, because most cars are much wider with the sidepod design, they have better cooling, and, we remember even it was Australia 2022, and of course Spain 2022, when Hamilton got up to P4 and then he had to slow down and let Sainz through because his car was overheating. It was going to be an issue for Mercedes, the overheating of the power units, and in the way that they packaged it, they had to make compromises to performance. That doesn't necessarily mean the engine couldn't be run at higher modes, but it means that certain things on the car, reliability stuff, they had to ensure was running at a lower level with the way they actually packaged it within the bodywork and created this year's engine to compensate for the reduction in cooling that the zeropod would generate. Does make you think they must have thought this was going to be unbelievable, right? Because, they're sacrificing other elements and they're sacrificing engine performance, and the car was pretty heavy with this package. They must have thought that, the wind tunnel and the simulator was telling them it was going to be like a second a lap faster than everything else on the grid. Of course, that wasn't the case in reality. So they stuck with the idea, though, through to the W14. We remember that the zeropod, slightly different concept, but, okay, the concept's the same, looks slightly different on the W14 compared to the W13, but still, at the start of the year, they designed their car and engine packaging for a zeropod concept. They thought it was going to give them performance. The reality is that this zeropod design, because of the limited cooling system, has limited the engine's power. Rumours are therefore emerging that there is significant room for evolution, as well as, a new concept for where these components are allocated. So, this is the article goes into detail on here. There's, they don't mention specific numbers, but the belief is that they think their engine can be vastly stronger next season, which says that it's at least going to be on par with the Ferrari and the Red Bull, maybe even stronger. I don't know. Of course, they had a big advantage for some time, and people thought maybe it's the biofuel that's thrown them off. Don't think that's the case. It's more likely to be a deliberate compromise for the performance edge they thought they would get from the zeropods that never materialized, and they then wasted another year tried to go for in 2023. Now they've realized their error, and they potentially can gain engine performance and improve on the aero side as well. And this is where this is the only way that you catch Red Bull, because I don't think realistically any team next year, including Mercedes, is going to be able to understand, to the extent that Red Bull do, this set of regulations and match them from an aerodynamic perspective. Mercedes are quite a way off from an aero side, but maybe a significant percentage of their deficit is actually engine performance. And if they can catch that up, then the rest of the gap might just be aero, which they potentially could catch up, and then they've got a similar situation. So I think this is the only way that Mercedes actually can try and catch Red Bull, because I don't think they're going to be able to catch up all of that aero deficit in an off-season, especially with Red Bull keep pushing ahead. But if Mercedes can make up, 10, 20, 25, 30 horsepower, then that's going to be several tenths a second a lap, and that's a pretty big deal. But as I say, on the other side of things, Red Bull are going to keep pushing ahead, and their penalty, which, to be honest, I kind of forgot that they had, is coming to an end this month. And I know that Red Bull have said that it's meant to have cost them about, 1.5 tenths of a second in performance they could have gained, which might be true, but then, they could potentially put some of that learning and testing into next year's car. So the reality is it hasn't really affected them much, and I wonder if they'd, had zero testing time, whether that would have actually made any difference anyway with the car they eventually put together. But so Red Bull are going to keep charging ahead, and their penalty is now coming to an end, so it's still doubtful that they're going to be caught, but engine performance is potentially one of the ways. Just to mention before we close out, a quick reminder for you guys on the Qatar Grand Prix this weekend. It's another sprint weekend. Very dramatic race back in 2021. Hamilton gets pole and wins. Verstappen got P2 in the end after, Gasly was on the front row. Alonso got a crazy podium, which for some reason wasn't mentioned here by WTF1, but there was a load of punctures, and that will be a very big talking point for the drivers and the teams this weekend as to how the tyre deck is going to work on a very high load circuit, especially the front left tyre goes through an absolute blender in that final sector of the track. And just to remember, the way it works now for the sprint weekends is you do practice one on Friday, then the qualifying for Sunday is on Friday, then Saturday morning you have the sprint shootout, which sets the order for the sprints, and the sprint shootout goes as follows with 12 minutes, 10 minutes, 8 minutes with a medium, soft tyre situation going on, and then you get, of course, the sprint on Saturday afternoon, or evening, I guess, because it's a night race, and then Sunday Grand Prix. So that's how that goes. Very much interested to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.